The following program is a production of KSPS Public Television and is made possible by the Friends of Seven.
That's where it used to be, right down by the river on the west end of Boone Avenue. It's a mobile home community now, but if you're older than 30, you may remember this as Nat Park. Hi, I'm Tom MacArthur. What was Nat Park? It was Spokane's playground for almost 100 years. There were days when 50,000 people would come here. That's about the same size crowd as Bloomsday attracts today. Imagine 50,000 people, men wearing hats, women in long dresses, and kids dressed in Sunday best. This was Nat Park.
But it was so beautiful in the early days. Beautiful flower gardens, picnic tables, and not many people had their cars in those days, you know, and the families would take their picnic baskets and spend all day.
Consider your television a time machine and travel back with us to a magical place called Natatorium Park. For the next hour, through the largest collection of home movies, still photographs, and memories ever assembled of the old park, Nat lives again.
Nat Park and I were young together, and that's a very sentimental thing. You know, everybody loves to reflect on what they did when they were young.
Well, I was just a little girl and my uncle took me. I lived in Coeur d'Alene, so I had never been to the park before. And he took me up in the Jackrabbit. And we got to the top and I said, "What are we going to do up here? Or why are we up here?" And he said, "Oh, we're just going to look at the park." And the bottom dropped out of everything. And I nearly strangled him, hanging onto his neck. So I was frightened, but it was fun. I loved it.
Mary May Garner rides the Jackrabbit the year it is installed at Nat Park, in 1920. The Rabbit is a gravity slide, an enormous wooden roller coaster built at a cost of $60,000. It is the biggest, loudest, fastest ride in the history of the park. Every trip begins with the command, "Hold your hats and don't stand up." Talk about a memorable ride.
Well, the Jackrabbit was one, and the big thing about that was, other than betting your life on the framework standing up, the feeling that you got when you dropped from a height to a low part and your stomach just went right out of its proper place.
For little kids, you know, it was almost petrification to get on that thing and hit that first drop off. You know, that would just suck your stomach right up into your chest and make you want to pass out. And going around those sharp curves, you know, and but once you'd ridden it a couple of times, it was a lot of fun, you know. And I don't think anybody ever got on there and thought, what the heck would happen if one of those rails split and this thing just took off out into space? I don't think anybody ever worried about it.
In the early days, as this 1939 photo shows, the Rabbit cars are rather plain. Newer cars are installed later to give the Rabbit an up-to-date look, though the track remains the same. Park owner Lloyd Vogle makes sure the roller coaster is inspected and tested every morning. Park employees are often drafted for the task.
I know in the first time the Rabbit, when it started up, I can remember Lloyd, no matter where you were working in the park, because there wasn't a whole bunch of people right, you know, before the park actually opened, he would start up the Jackrabbit and tell us that if, and I didn't like height, that if it stopped on, or started to stop on any of the curves or turns, that we'd get out and we'd push it, because the tracks after winter were kind of rusty and stuff. So until it went around for quite a few times, and I prayed that it wouldn't stop, and it never did. Anyway, when I was on it, it never stopped completely because I didn't want to get out and just push it way up down those tracks.
The Jackrabbit's appeal is timeless. Its gut-wrenching dips and turns are enjoyed for generations.
My favorite ride was the roller coaster, and I rode the roller coaster with my full complement of tickets until I ran out, not even getting off. It was just great. The Jackrabbit was definitely the standout. I just sat there and handed my tickets and didn't even get off till the whole strip was gone. It was just wonderful. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Definitely my favorite.
The Jackrabbit is the only ride at Nat Park on which someone is killed. It happens in 1965 when Gerald Tobler, a new employee at the park, is in the wrong place at the wrong time.
He was walking the track. Usually when we walk the track, you could walk it when it was going, but normally it'd be in the morning, and when that ride was shut down, you'd walk and make sure that all the steel and everything on where those wheels rode weren't lifting or anything wrong with it. Anyway, he was out there, and he apparently, the only thing I could think of when I was there, is that he was crossing when one of the cars were coming. Each car's 3,000 pounds with people in it. And he got hit dead center. So, and I just drove him down through the center structure of it. I was there, but I didn't want to see this. I knew it wasn't going to be good, you know.
The Jackrabbit lasts at Nat Park until the very end. When the park is dismantled in the spring of 1968, the echoes of rattling track and screaming children leave the park in a plume of smoke as the Jackrabbit is torn down and burned on site. How did Natatorium Park get started? And what is a natatorium anyway? To answer those questions, we need to turn back a few chapters in Spokane's history. The story of Natatorium Park begins more than 100 years ago. The year is 1889. Thousands of people filled with dreams and ambition are building new futures and fortunes from timber and mining in the Washington Territory. Investors in growing Spokane Falls see great potential in developing quiet homes on suburban land. One such development is Twickenham Addition, northwest of town, likely named after a classy garden spot in England. Lots in the area, described as the most charmingly situated suburb of Spokane Falls, sell for $300 apiece.
Twickenham, most attractive suburban residence site in Spokane Falls. At terminus of new cable railway, running trains every 10 minutes and only 20 minutes ride to the business center. Opening sale Monday, May 20th at 10 a.m. Call and see Platt and pick out your lots, for they will go like hotcakes. H. Bolster and Company Advertisement, Morning Review, May 19th, 1889.
Bolster and his financial partners are smart. Not only can they make a dandy profit selling land, but they build the Spokane Cable Railway line to bring in customers. People who aren't particularly interested in buying property are still worth a nickel each way riding their trolley, and many do, to the end of the line at a place called Twickenham Park. But it isn't real estate that draws the biggest crowds out to Twickenham. No, it's gambling, liquor, and baseball.
There was nothing here. You know, it was just basically vacant. And they had to have some way of even drawing people out on the trolley lines, other than the fun of riding the trolley, which was pretty exciting in those days. Anything that went faster than a horse was a trip in itself, you know. So people would ride the trolleys just for entertainment, but that grew old and they had to think of something else. So what they thought of next was the baseball field. So people were drawn to this area to watch the baseball games, and that soon wasn't enough, so they added vaudeville. There was a casino here with a restaurant and a bar and a dancing pavilion. And in those days, the crowd was possibly a little rougher than maybe would have been liked.
Twickenham Park Casino was thrown open to the public yesterday. The 4th Infantry Band gave an open-air concert commencing at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And at 9 o'clock, dancing to the sweet strains of an excellent orchestra took place, and the evening was passed most pleasantly. The casino adds greatly to Spokane's pleasure. The bar is admirable, yet new fixtures are on the way to make it, perhaps, the prettiest one in the city. Spokane Falls Review, Sunday, July 27th, 1890.
In the 1890s, Spokane is rebuilding from the Great Fire. One visitor from back east describes the scene as a human anthill.
To the editor of the Review, ever since I left Spokane Falls, I have had a great desire to let the people know what I think of them and their wonderful city. Did you ever see a disturbed anthill and watch the little creatures running hither and thither, carrying their household goods and seeking new places in which to rear their desecrated altars? Well, Spokane impressed me just like that, a human anthill uprooted from its foundation. And as I saw the people, men, women, and children, all busy, all in a hurry, all eager and determined to repair the waste places and make them more fair and substantial, I had a great respect for the place which has received so terrible a baptism of fire and still was neither discouraged nor dismayed. Mary J. Holmes, Spokane Falls Review, June 17th, 1890.
In 1892, the Spokane Cable Railway is electrified and absorbed into the Spokane Street Railway, a subsidiary of the newly formed Washington Water Power Company. The WWP joins electric companies across the country in exploiting the economic virtues of a trolley park.
The mass transit is almost totally a response to real estate development. All of our original streetcar or transit lines in Spokane were laid by people who wanted to sell real estate. And our bus routes today still carry the names of many of those developments: Lidgerwood, Cable Ad, Cannon Hill, and so forth. But there were dead periods, as well as rivalry with the other streetcar line, and so the water power, as did traction companies all over the United States. This wasn't an original Washington water power idea. Developed this place to carry people.
With new water power ownership and an exploding local population, Twickenham Park is poised for greatness and dives into the future with a renewed sense of purpose. Twickenham Park opens under professional management for the first time in 1893. While baseball continues as the park's main attraction, an idea is floated to build something new, something that will give the park a new mission and a new name. The idea is All Wet. It is the first heated pool in Washington state. But to call it merely a pool sounds plain. So it is called the Latin word for pool, a natatorium. The Twickenham Park Natatorium opens on a warm Saturday evening in July of 1893. It gives the park a fresh image of health and vigor. Advertisements welcome guests to Twickenham Park Natatorium and athletic grounds. The city's fencing clubs, boxing clubs, and other organized sporting pursuits all find a first home at Nat. In 1895, the business incorporates simply as Natatorium Park and receives a license to provide amusement rides and concessions. It will hold this name and operate as an amusement park for the next 73 years.
We portray Nat Park as a success story, and it was. I mean, when you think about it, it was a wonderful place. But not for everyone. And there's a tragic little counterpoint to the story.
Through the first several decades of the 20th century, Natatorium Park is a fun place to visit, unless you happen to be born with dark skin. In the fall of 1900, Emmett Holmes and his family stop in at the park restaurant for a bite to eat. His request for service is refused. Holmes files Spokane's first racial discrimination suit against the Washington Water Power Company for $5,000 and loses.
And at the very last paragraph in this article, it's a fairly long article. It says this starts a precedent that the Natatorium Park management does not need to accommodate colored people should it be against its taste. It is claimed that in accordance with the decision, colored people could be excluded from any restaurant or saloon or other public place. And the sad part, you know, that it would happen to anyone. And it was a family thing, not just one guy going in looking for trouble. He was very embarrassed and probably hurt on this thing.
Ironically, the phone number at the Natatorium Park restaurant at the time is Black 1261.
Those who come to Natatorium Park expecting to see a hoochie coochie show or any other feature characteristic of the vulgarities of the Midway will be much disappointed, since they will see nothing of that nature on the grounds. In fact, there will be no feature of amusement presented within the confines of the park that will bring a blush of shame or embarrassment to the most sensitive man, woman, or child. Audley Ingersoll.
Audley Ingersoll, son of an Eastern amusement park magnate, leases Nat Park in 1907 with the notion of harnessing technology solely for the purpose of fun. He hires 21 electricians and 50 carpenters to build several major additions to the park, including the largest dancing pavilion on the Pacific coast and a huge tower with a pool that allows patrons to shoot the chutes. The entire park is fitted with thousands of electric lights, 7,500 incandescent, and 45 arc lights in all. The illumination gives the effect of daylight at all times, so much so that the park is called a white city. Advertisements trumpet the new Nat Park as the Coney Island of the Inland Empire and a modern fairyland. Some just call it Ingersoll's Park. But Ingersoll's empire collapses like a house of cards within a year. Young, inexperienced, overextended, the reasons aren't clear, Ingersoll defaults on his payments and skips town. Washington Water Power reclaims the park and gets all of Ingersoll's improvements for free. Spokane's beloved carousel, which now sits in Riverfront Park, actually comes from Nat Park. It is given as a wedding gift from a father to his daughter in 1909. 3/4 of a century later, it is still cherished as the Wedding Carousel. How this carousel makes it to Spokane is a coincidence. Why it still survives here today is perhaps destiny. One of the first merry-go-rounds in America is installed at Coney Island, New York in 1876. It is carved by Danish immigrant Charles Loof, who quickly earns a reputation as being among the best merry-go-round carvers in the country. 30 years later, Loof carves a merry-go-round for Nat Park. But Washington Water Power balks at its $20,000 price tag. Loof instead gives the machine to two concessioners at the park as a wedding gift, Louis and Emma Vogle, Loof's son-in-law and daughter. The Vogles unveil their carousel in Natatorium Park on July 18, 1909. It is immediately the park's most cherished attraction. When this photo is taken in 1909, Emma Vogle can't imagine her husband will one day buy the entire park, and their son Lloyd will one day sell it.
This was a fantastic place. The crowds and the light and the people and just the atmosphere. It was unlike a carnival, and yet it was similar. You know, there weren't an awful lot of booths where you shot the ducks in a row or any of that kind of stuff, but it just had a great feel to it, you know, a feeling that you'd never get otherwise. The music and the atmosphere. It was everything to everybody in a way. You know, they had a place for picnics, they had a place for the rides, they had swimming in the wintertime. This was something that the town really, really went for, really enjoyed.
Dick McTighe and Bill Stewart have perhaps the largest collection of Natatorium Park postcards in the world.
This was the way they communicated with each other, the least expensive way, really.
Here are the tinted photos that sell for a penny, are mailed for a penny, and get where they're going with only a scribbled name and town. Each one provides a glimpse into what life was like in Spokane when the 20th century was but a teenager.
There's a lot of selective things that are passed on. You know, historically, that's usually what you see. You have to really dig to find the true picture.
Tony Beaumonte, together with his wife Suzanne, is culling Spokane's contemporaneous written record of events past for a series of books on local history. They are uncovering images of Spokane you will never find on a postcard.
In the 1900s, and you know, during all the settlement here, waterfront property, well, especially a river, and I have to say lakes were premium. People liked lakes, but river, you know, flowing water, that was the cesspool, the septic tank for communities. Although Nat Park was on the river, right on the river, you could physically see cesspool and garbage, everything that's undesirable to the early people who was put in that river to get rid of it, and it floated to somebody else.
The installation of the merry-go-round in 1909 marks the beginning of another growth spurt for Nat. For the first time, a full-time gardener is hired and works from an on-site greenhouse to add 3 acres of lawn, thousands of flowers, and an extensive system of shrubbery. The beautiful new grounds are the perfect backdrop to the many fine outdoor entertainers the park now attracts from across the country. Entertainers like Thomas Quincy, preeminent scientific head-foremost shallow water high diver, acknowledged by press and public to be the most graceful of all high divers. Quincy offers to perform his high dive act for $60 a week. There is no mention of life insurance. And Bert Morphy, the man who sings to beat the band. When he lets his great voice ring, the roar of the sea sounds like a gentle whisper, and the din of a brass foundry, the quiet drone of a country bee. With all this bravado in the air, newly appointed park manager John Pace decides it's time to replace that wimpy little pool. An enormous new natatorium is constructed, this one with a huge Olympic-sized swimming tank sloping from 2 to 12 feet deep, and unlike its predecessor, which was filled with river water, the new natatorium is filled with perfectly clear and pure well water. The tank is surrounded by 300 individual dressing rooms, each with its own window, and covered by a domed roof to allow use of the facility year-round. The Plunge, as it's called, opens in 1910.
They rented you woolen swimming suits, and you jumped in the water with this thing weighing half a pound, and as soon as you got out, it felt like it weighed 50 pounds because the wool just held the water. The daring people used to jump off the balcony into the pool. It was nice. It was a very steamy, moist place. You'd get in there and you'd be wet in or out of the water.
Pool rules are simple. No smoking or boisterous conduct allowed. Splashing water or interfering with persons not of your party is forbidden. The management reserves the right to eject any person who forces attention upon women bathers. A note titled Coal Consumption Plunge records 319 tons of coal are burned to heat the Plunge water its first season at a cost of $19,000. Roughly the same amount Washington Water Power refused to pay for the merry-go-round just the year before. Nat Park's season pass list reads like a who's who of Spokane luminaries. Even men like Davenport, Finch, and Glover take time out from business to recreate at Natatorium Park. Over the next few years, several other rides are added to the park, including the Joy Wheel, where you don't have to ride, but you do have to laugh.
And that was just a great big round hardwood turntable. And the idea was you buy your ticket and you get on and try to stay on as it began to revolve. And if you were quick enough to get in and sit in the very center, you could stay on almost till the end. But if you got down close to the perimeter, pretty soon you went scooting off the edge of the thing onto some padding.
And a large, green, monstrous-looking thing called the Dragon Slide. Both rides leave riders with slivers and burns.
There were never any accidents that I ever heard of, but people were constantly getting elbow burns, knuckle burns, and if you slipped and fell over on your side, you get an ear burn or your nose, or lose a patch of hair off the back of your head.
In 1916, special officers are patrolling the park with flashlights to enforce anti-spooning rules. A single kiss will result in your being handcuffed and brought to the park office. After all, no lady would be caught kissing a man in the park.
It's the summer of '35. We just gathered outside the dance hall, and you can see a portion of the dance hall.
Hal Eastberg plays piano with Phil Sheridan and his orchestra, and for many of the big bands that play at Nat. 60 years later, we hold a reunion of sorts between Eastberg and the Mason and Hamlin piano that used to be in the Nat Park Dance Hall. We give him a piece of sheet music he's never seen before, though it is written in 1909 by the manager of the piano department at Eiler's Music Store, a Mr. A.D. Scammell.
You know, the very first piano that we had in my family, my dad bought from the Eiler Piano Company, and it could have bought it from this fellow Scammell.
You know enough of the Nat Park story now to appreciate the lyrics of Dear Old Nat, sung by Mariel Heron.
Oh, Natatorium, that is the place, by gum, to take your girl for a gay old time. I guess we're going somewhere down the chutes we'll come at dear old Natatorium Park.
All records are smashed in 1923 when Natatorium Park sees its biggest crowd ever for the 4th of July, 50,000 people. But when the Dodgem cars are installed in 1924, Washington Water Power has already been hinting for more than 10 years that it wants to get out of the amusement park business. So, on April 13th, 1929, Vogle purchases all 43 acres of Natatorium Park from Washington Water Power, along with all the company's rides and every stick of furniture for $137,500. When the Custer Speedway is added that summer, the economy is racing along too. Life couldn't be sweeter for Vogle's Natatorium Park. That fall, the stock market crashes, and the country enters the Great Depression.
The Depression was a mean, hard time, and the opportunity to go to Nat Park, forget your cares, and you could, I suppose, for 50 cents, have a pretty good time.
Vogle knows in the amusement business, no one comes to an old park. You have to show something new all the time. He adds the pretzel dark ride the first year out of the Depression gate. By 1937, the old pretzels are off, and a fresh coat of paint makes the same ride fun in the dark. That same year, the old Joy Wheel is rolled out, and painters turn the building into the Nut House. In 1939, the baseball field goes, and a midget racetrack is laid out. There is always something new at Nat Park.
Now there's something, preservationists just freak out when they see something like that. They burned them all, practically. And there was considerable craftsmanship in those streetcars. You know, the paneling, the woodwork, the detail, and just torch them.
Spokane's Trolley Era ends as it begins, in a great fire. This is actual film, shot that summer evening in 1936, when the last of Spokane's trolleys is driven to the end of the Boone Astor line at Nat Park, and burn.
We were on a roll for new things. Everything they wanted everything new. It was after World War I. And we'd done without an awful lot of things during the war. But no, I was right along with them. I liked the new. I didn't cry over the trolleys at all.
It makes me want to cry. It's very sad. There were a lot of negatives about the trolley line. They weren't all wonderful. The streets in a lot of areas were dirt, and the trolleys were noisy, and the electric lines obscured the view above them. There were accidents that were trolley related, so they had their flaws. But looking at Spokane now, wouldn't we die to have that clean electric mass transit system that was in place way back then?
Not all of Spokane's trolley heritage is gone. Sections of the old Boone-Astor line are still here, peeking through the asphalt. And there is one survivor among the trolley cars that used to ride these tracks. Car number 140 is under restoration by the Inland Empire Railway Historical Society. Railings and steps, once part of the busiest trolley stop in Spokane at Natatorium Park, are still here too. With a little digging, we even find a spike from the trolley tracks at Nat.
There it is. Look at that.
A common iron spike, laid in 1889, takes on the allure of the finest treasure.
That's the first time these have seen sunlight in 60 years.
It is still possible for younger generations to know what a trolley ride is like, and for older generations to remember. Here on the Seattle waterfront trolley line, cars from Australia now provide the last remaining trolley experience in the Pacific Northwest.
My stepfather referred to one, I think it was the octopus. He saw a kid get on there one time that had been gorging himself on stuff, and the kid got sick and threw up while this thing was, and probably sprinkled everybody in the place. But he gave it the name the Regurgitator because it was such a really violent ride. But if you put a kid on there that's got a tummy full of potato salad and hot dogs, the first thing you know, it's going to be 2 meals that he had that day, one down and one up.
The octopus, or regurgitator as some call it, is invented by the same man who invents the rockoplane, rolloplane, flyoplane, lupoplane, and spider. His name is Lee Irely. Irely Aircraft Company of Salem, Oregon, actually gets its start in the 1930s building flight simulators. But Irely quickly sees his business take off in another direction.
He wanted something that people could get into and familiarize themselves with the controls more than anything. And he built a trainer, and we actually, I think, sold 6 of them to the Cuban government. But here they turned into an amusement ride.
You can still ride a rockoplane at a place called Thrillville, USA, near Salem, Oregon. Not just any rockoplane, but the rockoplane that used to be in Nat Park. Company records show the rockoplane at Nat bears serial number 6009. Here is the exact same ride Spokane children enjoy all those years ago. Irely rides aren't the only ones at Nat which induce nausea. Just ask Mike Green to tell you about his experience on these swinging biplanes in 1944.
We were flying actually over the crowd, And at that point, I realized that I had eaten too much or gotten on a ride that I should not have gotten on, and I felt very, very sick. The cockpit was so small that I couldn't really get rid of this problem on my lap, so I leaned over the side as this plane buzzed around over the crowd and proceeded to upchuck. And it was probably like a bombing run followed by repeated strafing runs. And I can remember as the ride wound down, someone hollering, "Kill that kid."
There's Ty waving in the front. Dad
in the front, isn't it?
Dad and Ty in the front, and there I am in the second one.
The Cobb kids remember taking the same ride in 1959 after the biplanes are removed and replaced with rocket ships. While they don't remember getting sick, food is still a big part of their Nat experience.
This was during the picnic part, and they had a pie eating contest. As I recall, I was winning, and the kids were all pointing to me, but my dad kept saying, I don't know what, he was encouraging me, I guess, to eat more and or faster. And I kept looking up to see what he was saying and ended up coming in second.
That's you?
Yeah. What a mess. There's Terry. Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember it very well. He talked to me too, but I wouldn't listen. I was busy eating. And I won a $10 bill for that. Great time. Not trying, I mean, I didn't know what to do next. There was so much to do, you know, because the Elks were putting on the picnic and they had a lot of things going on. And then, of course, there were all the rides and the arcade and the zoo and the train and, you know, which way do you go next? Just all kinds of fun. Great day.
One of the rocket ships from the Nat Park space ride survives today as a playground toy at the Montessori Early Learning Center on North Maple Street. This pre-space age rocket ship speaks silently of a different era, when amusement rides have no seatbelts, no lap bars, and no padded seats. With a little imagination, though, it can still take you to the moon.
When you walked in the door and Tommy Dorsey or Harry James, somebody like that was playing there, Benny Goodman, it just gave you goose pimples to hear that live music. I don't know what it is, but there's something about that live music that just made me just want to get out and move.
Nat Park has its last good run during the big band era. The sounds of Goodman, Miller, and Dorsey draw thousands of soldiers across the river from Fort Wright and thousands of sailors across the state line from Farragut to a world far away from talk of a world war. When Phil Harris and his famous Jell-O-sponsored radio orchestra play Nat in June of 1941, 3,000 people come to dance. 6 months later, the U.S. enters World War II.
The Nat knit people together in a common understanding that families were split for the war, that the kids they saw, the young men over on the rides were lonely and away, and that eventually the war would end and families would be reunited. Not every family would still be whole, of course, but that for this microcosm in time, we were all united by this amusement park. It was a great unifier. It was the common party for everybody in town.
On some evenings, the Nat Park Dance Hall attracts so many people that one only has room to dance in place. John Fay is working one of the doors the night Kay Kaiser and his band literally bring down the house.
And then all of a sudden, we heard this thwack, and there was no panic, but everybody said, "Ooh, what was that?" You know, and it turned out that one of the part of the floor had broken. It didn't collapse or fall clear through. My recollection is that there wasn't anything under the place except some pilings holding it up. So they cleared everybody out and went under there and jacked the floor up, and back came all the families, and they played the rest of the evening.
The Natatorium Park office was if I recall, was an octagon building with 18 steps, I believe, going to the office.
Phil Slusser begins working at Nat Park in 1952 for 70 cents an hour. His boss is Louis Vogle's son, who takes over after his father passes away.
Lloyd Vogle was the owner when I worked there. Very intelligent person. Difficult to work for until you got to know him. Once you knew Lloyd, he was very easy to work for. He had his moods. He was almost like a father to me the number of years I knew him. That he helped me a lot in growing up.
Vogle also helps another youngster grow up, his stepdaughter, Jerry Sperling. Jerry's stepfather is also her boss when she starts working as a soda jerk.
We needed to smile. It was a fun place to be. People were down there having a good time. We needed to take care of them and greet them. The place had to be clean. He was very, very fastidious when it came to food handling and that type of thing. And you always had to be moving. Could not be sitting down.
Sperling remembers Nat Park as the best backyard in town. Any ride in the park, any animal in the zoo is hers alone before the gates open each day. She is a little shadow to the big man who calls her babe. The last big attraction added to Nat Park is a 16-gauge, 1/5 scale Union Pacific train. The Golden Spike is driven during Lilac Festival Week in 1952. And after a christening with Soda Pop, Vogle takes his new train on its first ride. The train becomes a new symbol for Nat Park, making an appearance in the Lilac Festival Parade. Jerry's mother is the spark plug behind the float idea and other efforts to bring people to the park.
The big thing at the park was my mother trying to acquaint Lloyd with what he needed to do to upgrade and keep the park surviving, and things that she thought needed to happen. And working with and hearing him telling her, you know, what's wrong with what we have. So I believe she was a woman ahead of her time and understood what was taking place. The conversations I remember more than anything were those of how do we keep us alive?
With pools now all over town, the first one in Washington State is torn down in 1956 and made home to a trained SEAL act. But with movies, television, and the open road calling people, fewer and fewer are hearing the call of Nat. Years of decreasing attendance and increasing costs begin to take their toll on Nat Park in the early 1960s, and the family behind the family business falls apart.
Well, I think the hard part was the fact that my mom and Lloyd divorced, and I believe that was the demise for both of them, which is too bad. With Lloyd, he lived in the past a lot, as I think some people do. And over a period of time, things just went downhill, and the park was not taken care of, and it wound up in the hands of the receivership.
Natatorium Park is quietly put up for sale in 1962. Local Shriners looking to build a new temple buy the land from Louis Vogle's widow. Bob Peters is potentate of the Elkatif Shrine when the deal is inked.
We didn't know at that time what we were going to do with it. All we knew that their property had lots of value, had a lot of history. Maybe we could build a building down there to call it the Shrine Temple. We didn't know for sure. And then we got into, when the deal was consummated and became our property, then we said, well, let's maybe run this for a while.
Natatorium Park sits closed during the 1963 season. Shriners run it themselves in 1964. Meanwhile, Lloyd Vogle begins a new life. He is hired to a new job 3,000 miles away from Spokane and makes it big in the Big Apple as the Pyro King.
Lloyd was a pyrotechnician. Now what that means is the big thing in Spokane was 4th of July, and Lloyd and my mom used to fire off the fireworks, set them off. So Lloyd had that license. So what he was going to do was go back to the World's Fair, New York, and he would work that and then come back with the money he had, and eventually he was just always going to bring things back the way they were. But Lloyd didn't come back. That's when Lloyd died.
The night before he is to return to Spokane, Lloyd Vogle's lifeless body is found on a New York sidewalk. His will leaves everything in Nat Park to his friend and park electrician, Bill Oliver. Oliver runs the park himself in 1966, but despite his best efforts, sees a net operating loss of more than $10,000. Nat is dying a slow, painful death.
Things have been going downhill for a long time. It wasn't really, money wasn't being put back into it like it should have been for quite a few years. I think when my dad got it, he was trying, but I think it had fallen maybe a little bit too far to really turn it around.
Oliver makes one last go at it in 1967. These are some of the last photographs taken in Nat Park that summer. The place hadn't looked better in years, and there was optimism in the air.
Up until the 4th of July, Bill Oliver had an optimism that was just contagious. Oh yeah, we're going to bring in a tilt-a-whirl, and we're going to bring in a scrambler. We're going to add more cars to the train, another engine, and you're going to have one of those up next week. And yeah, and then after that, after the 4th of July, and I wasn't here that 4th of July, I don't know whether attendance was disappointing or what it was, but the attitude in him seemed to change.
The first public death announcement for Nat Park is published in Amusement Business magazine in November of 1967. "Park equipment for sale," reads the ad Bill Oliver places. All the park's assets are listed, including the train, the bumper cars, and the carousel.
It died partly because the attractions got tawdry. It died partly because people didn't ride streetcars anymore. They drove their automobiles. And having a selection of where to go, didn't always go to Nat. They would go to the lakes or someplace like that. It died partly because the attractions were old hat. And I think it died partly, I just would say, from old age. People knew what it was. They might go to Nat as a last resort instead of a first resort.
Time runs out for Nat Park and its owners. Shriners pulled the plug on the fun and games in 1968, clear the land, and put in a mobile home park.
We were just basically going to close it up and maintain a certain section and just fence it off and let it sit there for a long time. And our people said, no, we laid our fezzes out there for everybody to look at, and we were going to do this and that. Now let's, by golly, get to it. And they did. They began to research what could be done, and the mobile park came up. At that time, it was very popular. There were a lot of being developed in the whole area, and our property seemed to fit it quite well.
Bob Briley is a news reporter for KHQ when Nat Park closes. An old script reminds him of the park that was left to die a natural death. Just like the last trolley car, few seem to mourn its passing.
I don't recall anything more than just a kind of a muttering, you know, maybe a few letters to the editor here and there, but as far as I know, there was no organized resistance to the intent of the shrine to just close the place down entirely.
Well, I didn't mind it because I felt bad about the park. It was in such bad condition. If it had been still pretty and everything, I would have felt bad. But there were no flowers, no animals, and even a lot of the rides were closed before the park finally closed. It was really in bad condition.
The shrine pays $75,000 for the Natatorium Park site in 1962. In 1986, the property, with more than a mile of Spokane River frontage, is valued at $2.4 million. If Nat Park were alive today, it would be the oldest continuously operated amusement park on the West Coast. Instead, that honor belongs to Oaks Park. The Oaks and the Nat have similar histories, but Oaks Park has two big advantages over Nat Park. It is given to the community as a non-profit corporation, and it lies in the shadow of a big city.
As they say in the retail business, we have location, location, and location. Certainly being located on the Willamette River within 5 minutes of downtown Portland, with Portland in the skyline, with 46 acres of beautiful green space, as we call it, meaning native growth of white oak trees, has to be the #1 asset.
Color is another advantage the Oaks has over the Nat. The Natatorium Park Dance Hall is draped in orange and black, not the colors Lloyd Vogle's contemporary at Oaks Park would choose.
Well, Lloyd was one of a kind, and he a little eccentric in some of his ideas, and it showed in the park. As I remember, his color scheme was a little unusual for an amusement park. The buildings were a little, he went towards green paint, as I remember. That seemed to be his favorite. And green is nice, but it's not the happy color.
Many people wonder what Nat Park could have been. Jim Downard knows. It could have been the world's greatest amusement park. This is the result of 10 years of dreaming about and drawing what Nat Park could have looked like today. A 700-acre, world-class entertainment behemoth, twice as big as anything else in the country, but it is still called Nat Park.
What a perfect name. How magnificent it is. It's short, it's pithy. It's not like so many flags over so many places. It's not a very complicated name that has to have semicolons in it. It's extremely simple. And 1-800-NAT-PARK. It makes a perfect toll-free phone number. It's advertising purpose. Suggests Nat, national, natural. You could even have an ad campaign with, I thought of a wonderful one with Washington State, and you'd have Natural Wonders, Mount Rainier and all this kind of stuff, and Natural Wonders of things from the amusement park. You know, it works out nicely.
What would Lloyd Vogel think of a Nat Park with 200 rides, 28 roller coasters, and a dozen theme zones?
I sure hope he would like it. To do it honor, because Nat Park is something that meant so much to people in Spokane, and to have it just kind of fizzle away and die like a desiccated thing, and that's all, it's gone. I wanted something that when anyone said Nat Park, everyone in the country would go, wow, that Nat Park, have you seen Nat Park? You know, oh, that's amazing, the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life. That's something that I think they would be pleased that at least I tried to create something that would be that impressive for them.
Natatorium Park affects the lives of more people than we will ever know. We know of one. Nat's little train makes a big impression on a little Spokane kid. Mark Blumhagen now has an amusement business of his own, an interest he first develops at Nat Park.
Corny as it might sound, you've heard the old expression, where you're born is not necessarily the place of your birth, but where you find out who you are. And I guess between this and the Spokane Fairgrounds as a child, this is where I found out really what I wanted to do.
This is one of those little crossing signals. See, here's the conduit. There's the wires that went up to it. And then here's the bolts.
Blumhagen can tell you exactly where the train used to run through Nat Park and hopes to someday see his train run again here in Spokane. Perhaps he will ask Carol Hawes to christen it with soda pop, just as she does almost 50 years ago.
Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. So I remember taking the first ride around the park. Well, I think this is a very memorable time.
And of course, there is the carousel.
One man virtually saved this carousel and got a community involved in saving it. And it didn't happen to the other rides at Nat's Park. And I think it's because the other rides at Nat Park didn't have ponies that look back at you. These horses really do have personalities, and if you throw them away, you feel like you've killed somebody.
A citywide fundraising campaign in the early 1970s earns enough money to keep the carousel in Spokane. Bill Oliver works to restore it, and for his efforts, the lead horse on the Spokane Carousel is named for him, Oliver's Pride. The old Loof Carousel is rededicated in Spokane's Riverfront Park on May 7th, 1975. Bill Oliver throws the switch, and the horses jump to life once again. Dorothy Powers is there covering the story for the Spokesman Review.
The carousel was considered the most cherished and valuable memento of Nat that the city could possibly save, so that it has, I think still, a major part of everybody's heart. Even the people who didn't know it down at Nat have learned to love it in Riverfront Park.
A week after the dedication, while watching the carousel turn in the May sun, Oliver dies of a cerebral hemorrhage. Charles William Oliver Sr., the man who gave new life to Spokane's carousel, is laid to rest at Greenwood Memorial Park. At Fairmount Memorial Park, you can find the final resting place of Lloyd Vogle and his parents, Louis and Emma Vogle, to whom the carousel was given as a wedding gift. The carousel is a living marker for them all, a wooden monument declared a National Historic Place in 1977 that gets 250,000 visitors a year.
There were many ups and downs while at the park, but I think remember it as a child, from the child's eyes. I think that's very important. Remember it in its glory, when it was so special, a special place for the people of Spokane and all over.
Nat Park was right there. It was in your backyard. You could go there, and it was kind of like owning something without having to be responsible for it, you know. Boy, Nat Park was yours, and you could go there and be guaranteed a good time.
I met Nat Park when I was young. The Nat Park and I were young together, and that's a very sentimental thing. You know, everybody loves to reflect on what they did when they were young.